Here are some tricky questions and their answers that I've been asked about the CTMU. Is the CTMU consistent with Abrahamic monotheism? Chris Langan writes, God, best understood as ultimate reality, has super-tautological structure, which implies certain properties which are consistent with the definitions of God that occur in major religions like Christianity, Islam, and Judaism. That said, the CTMU definition of God differs somewhat from the traditional formulation of these faiths. Does the CTMU explain phenomena that we observe? The CTMU has a number of proofs about phenomena which are observed: the apparent outwardly accelerating expansion of the universe as a function of its internal expansion and evolution through conspansion, the invariance of the speed of light as the speed of information processing in the universe, the role of perception in creating reality in line with quantum wave function collapse and John Wheeler's self-excited circuit idea of cosmology, gravity as a property of the conspansive manifold. The conspansive manifold is generalization of Einstein's block universe. The geometry of reality being akin to Stephen Hawking's intrinsic cosmology, such that it's able to create and bring itself into existence, and even an advanced logical proof for the reality of paranormal phenomena. Whatever you're looking for in the CTMU, you will find it. Why does God remain hidden? God is the ultimate ground and source of all being. Creation is connected to his energy, but not his essence. There are traces of God to the discerning in his teleology and in considering the universe and human existence as a whole, but not relative to other things in creation, because everything subsists in it. There's nothing to be differentiated against. So there can't be the scientific method where, like, you take a control sample and you have a different sample, you do experiments on it, and you find this part has God and this part doesn't, because God is everything. And so what God wants is not merely for us to intellectually recognize him, but have faith in him even when he can't be seen by the eye, and to carry out his will as secondary images of God in creation, thereby attaching ourselves to the fullness of his being. What is the relationship between God and infinity? God is the infinite one, coupling unity and infinity and all scales of minimal and maximal self-generation. God's unity cannot be understood apart from his infinity, and his infinity cannot be understood apart from his unity. In fact, unity and infinity cannot be understood apart from one another at all. God, the infinite source of everything, reveals himself in the communion of love between the infinite itself, the expression of the infinite, and the manner in which the infinite expresses itself in the world, all meta-simultaneous aspects of God. How does the CTMU explain natural selection? The selection for fitness over time ultimately requires the intelligence of nature and the creative faculty to the universe, which are each formulated as properties of the mind of the global operator descriptor, GOD, in the CTMU. Natural selection evolves towards a teleology, a purpose or end, according to the mind and will of God. Life in the universe evolve in coupling and through recursive cross-definition, like the twin serpents of the yin and yang, each the fullest expression of the divine life. Is the CTMU Christian theology repacked? Is it pantheism? Not quite. The CTMU, although it faithfully mirrors much of Christian theology and ethics, is a meta-religious framework which accommodates all of the world's great faiths, but grounds them in logic in such a way that they can be reinvigorated and rekindle the creative fire of mankind. The CTMU is a theory of panentheism, not pantheism. God extends over the whole universe, but also beyond it. The CTMU contains no restrictions on God's absolute creative power, knowledge, personality, and presence. God is the infinite source of everything, scaling all levels of personality and impersonality, creating and sustaining the universe and entering into direct relationships with his secondary images, such as human beings. Can evolutionary theory and religion coexist? Chris Langan says the CTMU is a theory of meta-Darwinism because it shows how the universe evolves by hological self-replication and self-selection and the intrinsic purpose of biological and cosmic evolution. That said, neo-Darwinism, as it is currently presented by people like Richard Dawkins and others, affirms that there is no purpose or end of natural selection and everything evolves by random mutation, which is not consistent with logic, the CTMU, or religion, which say that an intelligent creator intentionally guides or intervenes in the evolution and emergence of biological life. How can the CTMU be organized for expanding global inclusion? The CTMU provides the logical and metaphysical basis to justify profound moral improvement at the individual and societal level. Chris Langan writes, "A global society that finally comes to accept the CTMU behaves more sustainably and with greater resilience than a society anchored to flawed, inexorably sinking worldview. It offers real meaning to its members and is not disrupted by frequent descents into irrationality. By encouraging intellectual competence and creativity, it has the potential to maintain a high general standard of living." Is reality a projection? Yes, but it's a projection from a mind far more powerful and general than our own, of which our minds are parts thereof, the mind of God. Death is only inevitable and inescapable if we interdict our connection to the mind of God through mortal sin and blasphemy. In the words of Chris Langan, as long as we remain firmly embedded in the source of existence, we need not fear non-existence. It is not even an option. Does the CTMU define demons as egregores? An egregore is any non-terminal/spiritual being which gains coherence through the collective thought patterns of a group and affects the thought patterns of individuals in that group, not necessarily of a negative polarity. And a demon is in particular a negative/evil egregore which collects humans as resources to carry out its bidding. Is the dualism in Darwinism problematic from a reality theoretic standpoint? Yes. This is one of the topics addressed in Langan's paper, Cheating the Millennium, the Mounting Explanatory Debts of Scientific Naturalism. Dualism, and in particular mind-body/mind-matter dualism, is a major problem in both Darwinism and mechanistic materialism, which seem to have become synonymous with one another. It impairs the overall connectivity of reality, where mind and matter must be in constant mutual contact. Do we need to do away with Jesus as being the Logos? Institutional Christianity, as it is currently practiced, can be done away with in the sense that it does not need to be practiced by everyone as a matter of law, as a matter of course. But Christ/the Logos, and even arguably the church, cannot, because Jesus is actually identified with the Logos in the CTMU and in Scripture. You'll remember Jesus says to Simon Peter, he says, you are Simon Peter, and on this Petros, on this rock, I will build my church, and the gates of hell will not overcome it. And because Christ and the Logos actually comprise the basis for absolute truth, teleology, order and harmony in the universe, and for God to subsist in creation, he cannot be done away with. Do objects subsist within themselves? No. Everything exists in communion with everything else. The idea of self-relation ultimately leads to mechanistic materialism and denies the overall unity of reality. There's one identity in which everything subsists. Being is communion. Could an apple exist if reality wasn't real, or is it the expression of a more fundamental identity and purpose? Why is beauty good? Beauty is a function of teleology and a reflection of the overall coherence of the cosmos and the human striving for something greater and more godly than mere being. Intelligence and beauty were once traits prized in our society because when properly utilized, they lead to the flourishing of the soul for everyone. Beauty is good. We can't monetize God. God is the infinite source of everything, and we can make contact with him through truth, beauty, goodness, and love, which will one day, God willing, be the most prized treasures of human existence. In the words of Chris Langan, the beauty, truth, and perfection of God are limitless. This is the paradigm on beauty the CTMU brings to bear. How does the CTMU make sense of illogical statements like, this statement is a lie? By excluding such formulations from reality. The first and most fundamental axiom of the CTMU is the reality principle. Reality contains all and only that which is real. A statement like X equals not X, or this statement is a lie, cannot be true or realized within reality, or make logical contact with anything in reality. And thus, although the statement can be formulated in our minds, is not part of intelligible reality in any analytic sense. Are we the same as God? Try to think of God as the ground and source of all being, whose personality comes from his interaction relative to creation. Part of his will to self-identification is having something separate from himself, wherein he can be identified by observer participants in creation in this world of space, which extends in 3-dimension, time, which extends from past to future, and consciousness, which encodes between inner and outer reality, from our individual selves to the universal self, the identity of reality, aka God. God injects his being into each one of us so that we can participate in the reality self-simulation universe, define, reinforce, and extend his being. Our minds are a part of God's mind, directly connected to the greatest source of knowledge and power in existence. From our limited perspective in creation, it is impossible to circumscribe the abilities and creative power of that mind. However, there is a mapping called the meomorphic grammar, which connects God to each of his secondary images, and it's on this basis that we can have a relationship. Every single human is an expression of that same ultimate identity, which transcends any of our individual personalities. So the CTMU isn't quite this kind of new age, yeah, we're all God, man. But it's also not like I am God, you are not. It's the we have this relationship with God. This is the soul. That's how that's defined. Is God where is that there's this grammar, this meomorphic grammar, which connects God to his secondary images. And so we are, in an ultimate sense, you could actually say that we are God, but that has to be qualified because we're cognitively bound observers in reality. So, what is unbound telesis? Unbound telesis is the monic single aspect substrate of the universe. It is a metaphysical generalization of energy, information, mind, and will, existing prior to its bounding as an infinite expansive potential which consists of possible futures and possible realities. Its potential. It wants to self-actualize, so it's looking for materials through which it can create true and good order and build an identity for itself. And this is this creative or teleological evolution, which occurs in the CTMU, is it creates this matter, and then you have this kind of unfolding teleologic evolution at the cosmic, biological, and even socio-political scales. It's all this this monic substance coming to know itself through the physical universe. How can I learn the CTMU? I'd recommend going to ctmu.net and printing out the Cognitive Theoretic Model of the Universe, a New Kind of Reality Theory, Chris Langan's introductory CTMU paper. It's around 50 pages. It's part of it gets a little complicated, like 30 pages 30 through 40-ish go pretty deep into computational language theory, but most of it is pretty readable. Read it maybe 2 to 3 times, and I think you should get it. Don't be upset if you don't understand a word of it the first time. As my friend and podcast guest recently, Harrison Cayley, wrote, it's like reading the CTMU is like it's like benching twice your body weight with only your prefrontal cortex. But as you work your way through the philosophical tradition, A History of Western Philosophy by Bertrand Russell helped me understand the CTMU a lot better, and read the paper multiple times. So you'll start to see how it fits together. And then you can read all of Langan's papers at hology.org. He has around 6 to 10 major ones, depending on how you count it. Dr. Gina Langan, Chris's wife, says that the CTMU Ancourt, A New Kind of Reality Theory paper, is CTMU for dummies. You just might need to read it a few times. There's also plenty of good CTMU content on YouTube, CTMU Radio, the official CTMU page, myself, Mathematical Metaphysics, Greg Wilford, CTMUist, Daniel Wilk has audiobooks of the CTMU, and others, all linked in the description. I'd also recommend subscribing to Chris and Dr. Gina Langan's Substack, both linked in the description as well. You can go to megafoundation.substack.com to subscribe to the Mega Foundation, Chris and his wife, Dr. Gina Langan's teleologic newsletter, and chrislangan.substack.com to subscribe to Chris Langan's Ultimate Reality. That is the most important thing you can do right now, this minute, for the CTMU movement. Also, like, subscribe, leave a comment. But everything, as always, will be linked in the description. Let the light shine forth in the darkness. May the peace of our Father in heaven be upon you. Like and subscribe. Peace.